Hi guys, Sarah Halina here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Arrowverse's latest crossover, Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, stay tuned. Okay, so if you follow me on any of my social medias, you know that I posted the update that I wasn't posting the video because I was sick. The winter weather hit like a ton of bricks and my voice was sore, and I figured with Crisis being 5 hours long that there was a lot to talk about, so I wanted to wait for my voice to feel better. So yeah, sorry it's massively delayed, but it's here. So first I'm going to talk about what I loved about Crisis on Infinite Earths. The first thing I loved was when everybody's passing baby Jonathan around to everybody and he won't stop crying, and then finally they reach Mick, and baby Jonathan just like smiles up at him, and it is the cutest thing because Mick is like the most gruff, I guess, out of everybody that was there, and baby Jonathan's just like, yeah, this guy's cool. So I love that, but I love baby Jonathan in general. He's just so adorable. I love him. The other thing I loved was that Lois is attracted to every single Clark Kent. That was just a lot of fun to see. It wasn't a whole big thing. It was just sort of every time she saw a Clark Kent, she's like, ooh, okay. So it was small, but it was there, and it was fun. I loved the return of Vibe. Cisco on The Flash has been great, but I've really missed Vibe. And so when the Monitor tells Cisco Vibe must live again, I literally cheered. I love Vibe. So the return of Vibe was great. But speaking of Cisco, his disgust of the Anti-Monitor name, that was another thing that I absolutely loved. Cisco throughout his whole time within Crisis, it was small, but it was there, and basically he was just like, so nobody's discussing me about names or costumes anymore, really? Okay. So, yeah, I really love Cisco and his just sort of disgust of everything. Another thing I loved was letting Caitlin come out to say goodbye to Barry, even though it didn't really matter in the end, because Caitlin and Barry have one of my favorite friendships, and with Killer Frost being sort of the more prominent character, it was a little weird that we never really got to see Caitlin and her reaction to the fact that Barry was going to die in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so Killer Frost letting Caitlin come out to essentially say goodbye to Barry was really sweet. I really loved it. But yeah. Another thing I loved, the flashback before Earth 90's Flash death. Yeah, that was just, a lot of people were saying, oh, that felt really random, but I think it was really sweet, and I really loved it. Another thing, though, Oliver's final death being in Arrow's episode. When Oliver died in hour 1, I was like, okay, that's weird. But there are fans that either skip crossovers entirely because they don't watch all the other shows, or they watch the select parts of the crossover of the shows that they watch. So I think it was important for those fans, the fans that watch Arrow and maybe not the other shows, to really get to experience Oliver's death in Arrow's episode of the crossover. So that was another thing I really liked. But on top of all that, with Barry and Sarah being the two that were with him in his final moments, I think that was really important too, because they are the two out of all the Paragons and everything that were there. They're the two that have the deepest connection to Oliver. So I think it was very important that the two of them were there with him in his final moments. I really enjoyed seeing Sarah get to suit up. I think Legends of Tomorrow is honestly probably one of my favorite shows just because it's so crazy and it's so out there, but it doesn't really allow for the opportunity for their characters to suit up in their superhero outfits. So getting to see Sarah in her White Canary outfit was amazing. I think we don't really see Sarah in her White Canary outfit at all. It really just comes at crossover times because Legends is that time traveling show, so they're usually in costumes to match the time period. So it was really great to see Sarah suit up in her White Canary outfit. I really liked all the remarks that were made during the Paragons versus Shadow Demons fight. Just every single one of them had some little quip to say, and I absolutely loved every single one of them. So that was really fun. I really loved Kara fangirling over the United Earth. Like, her going around and realizing that she is on the same Earth as, you know, Batwoman and Flash and the Legends and Arrow, essentially, was just, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed seeing Kara just be, like, that complete fangirl. I love that Baby Sarah's back. Flashpoint essentially replaced Diggle and Lila's daughter with a son, and now Diggle and Lila have a daughter and a son. So it'll be really interesting to see how the future changes now that Diggle and Lila have Baby Sarah back, and it'll be really interesting to see what else changed about the future. I'm going to call them the new Trinity's goodbyes to Oliver. So Kara, Barry, and Sarah, in the big Hall of Justice, they were basically talking to his costume and saying their goodbyes and how he touched their lives so much. Yeah. But speaking of the new Hall of Justice, I really love that that's their new headquarters, and they have like this whole table set up where everybody has their assigned seats. That just brings me so much joy. I love it so much. But like the dynamics between the characters was also a lot of fun. Whether it was between characters that have known each other for years, or whether it's dynamics with characters who have never met, like Sarah and Mia. I really loved the growth of Kara and Kate's friendship, and Sarah and Barry had a lot of great scenes together. So it was a lot of fun seeing all the different dynamics between all the different characters. The cameos. I absolutely love the cameos. Some of them were bigger than others. And it didn't matter whether they were small cameos or they played larger roles in the Crisis. I absolutely loved every single one of them. But the two that really stood out for me was Ezra Miller. So finally we have some connection between the Arrowverse? Flareoverse? What are we calling it now that Arrow is essentially done? I don't know. But essentially the TV verse and the cinematic verse. I love that there's that little tie in there. But another one that I really loved was Marv Wolfman, who created the Crisis on Infinite Earths comics. He played the fan of the Super Friends team up. So he asked Kara and Barry to sign his picture of the two of them together, and that was really sweet. That was really fun. I'm glad that they were able to put him in some capacity because, I mean, he played such a large part in the whole reason that we were allowed to have this crossover to begin with. So I really loved that he got to be a part of it in some small way. And granted, he did write Hour 4, co-write Hour 4, which was Arrow's episode. So he did play a part in behind the scenes, but it was great to see him on camera as well. But finally, the last thing that I really kind of loved was the balance of characters. in the past, it really felt like when you were watching a particular episode of the crossover, the characters from that show would randomly pop in, have a part to play, and then they would disappear for the rest of the crossover. But this one felt a little bit more balanced, and I mean, Arrow's episode really was a Barry-centric episode. The Legends episode really featured more Supergirl characters than the Supergirl episode did. So it was really nice to kind of get that balance, and it didn't feel very disjointed, like, oh, well, it's the Flash episode, we gotta throw in Flash characters. It's a Supergirl episode, we gotta throw in Supergirl episode characters. And Batwoman, because Batwoman is sort of the newbie of the Arrowverse, she didn't have any characters from her show pop up. So that was really interesting, but it worked. It told a cohesive story, and I really loved that. But Crisis on Infinite Earths was not perfect. There were plenty of things that I didn't like. And one of the things I didn't like, this may be just for me, but the lack of Katie Cassidy. No, I don't count that semi-flashback that we had as part of it. I really wanted to see her suit up in her Black Canary outfit and fight along her sister. I've always wanted more of the Sarah Black Siren dynamic, and we had a little bit in the season 6 finale of Arrow when Quentin died. We had a little bit of a moment for them, and then Lost Canary happened, and we had a little bit more, and I'm like, I want more, and the crossover was the perfect opportunity to have it, and we didn't. So that one was just for me. But another thing that I didn't like, 0 breaks for Kara. Honestly, this girl has had a rough year. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths happens. She loses Earth 38. She loses Argo City. She loses her mother. It's like, this girl cannot catch a break. And I feel so bad for her. She's been crying a lot this season. So, hopefully things get better for Kara in the future. But yeah, she's had a rough year. The Monitor. I really despise the Monitor. I know we're supposed to be on his side, like, he's trying to save the universe and everything like that, but he really is not big on sharing vital information. Like, he's like, oh yeah, it'll all make sense in, a week or whatever. Like, it's like, no, if I'm asking for details, give me details. Don't keep me in the dark, because that's not going to do anybody any good. So, the Monitor and his uncooperativeness was another thing that I do not like. But this one really bugged me, and I think, judging from a lot of the responses online as well, that Sarah was okay with using the Lazarus Pits to revive Oliver. Like, Mia's like, we're going to revive Oliver with the Lazarus Pits, and Sarah's like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And she's like, yeah, well, let me know when it's your father. And then Sarah's like, well, I guess we're going to do it. And it's like, no! What Sarah needed to do was say, hey, I was revived by the Lazarus Pit. Spoiler alert, not fun. And I did lose my father and my sister. And I exist on a time ship, and I cannot go back and save them. So maybe we just need to let Oliver die. But no, she was fine with bringing him back with the Lazarus Pits, and that just seemed really out of character, honestly. So that was with that one. Everyone's death at the end of hour 3. Honestly, when we transported a bunch of people from Earth 38 over to Earth 1, alright, great. Perfect. But then Earth 1 vanished, and it was like, okay, so we're just gonna find a way to undo all of this in the last 2 hours. And I really was sitting there throughout the break going, just please do not follow the route of Endgame. Because there was no way they were going to be able to pull that off. And They didn't. They didn't go the route of Endgame. They found another way to do it. But, yeah, essentially by killing everybody at the end of hour 3, it's like, okay, so this is all going to be undone anyways, so why did I sit through the first 3 hours? So I really didn't like that whole thing. I think we could have left Earth 1 intact type thing. But, yeah. More than a month-long break. I really had an issue with this one. I know that they wanted to get Legends in there, so the Legends premiering at mid-season, it had to be a workaround type thing, but honestly, waiting more than a month for the last half of this crossover made it feel very disjointed. I put off watching the first 3 hours until I think it was December 27th when I watched the first 3 hours, and even that little bit of a break that I had, I was sitting there losing my mind. So for those that were watching, like, December 3rd, I think it was when it first aired, I can't even imagine how insane everybody was going, trying to, you know, wait for the last half of the crossover, because I was going insane. I did not like the way Barry, Cisco, and Caitlin learned about Earth 2's destruction. I know that a lot of people were saying that they wish that they would have found out during the first half of Flash, since it kind of got destroyed in Arrow's first episode. But really, the fact that they didn't learn about this from Oliver was really weird. Yeah, I don't know. I had a problem with the way they learned about Earth 2's destruction. Nothing from the newspaper article came into play at all. You know, that famous newspaper article that has been in Flash since season 1. Nothing from that came into play at all except for Flash disappearing, and it wasn't our Flash, it was 90s Flash, it was John Wesley Shipp's Flash, so, I mean, I guess, but, I really, that whole newspaper article was essentially seeming like what Flash was building to, what it was going to culminate in, and, yeah, nothing from it happened, so, hopefully, you know, maybe when Flash is ready to go off the air, we get something similar to that. But also nothing from Elseworlds really came into play either. I don't understand what Elseworlds' purpose was. We literally got the Anti-Monitor. Not the Anti-Monitor. I'm calling him the Anti-Monitor because I really don't like him. But the Monitor and his deal with Oliver to save Barry and Kara. And that was the only semblance of Elseworlds that we got. And I don't understand why we had Elseworlds to begin with. But I also didn't like Bebo. Look, I like Bebo as much as the next person, but Bebo felt very out of place in this crossover. And, I mean, yeah, he was supposed to serve as a distraction, but, yeah, Bebo felt very out of place in this crossover. But, you know, I still love you, Bebo, just not in this moment. Black Lightning joining the Arrowverse. Basically, my issue with Black Lightning joining the Arrowverse is Netflix is how we watch Black Lightning in Canada. Some TV providers do have CW as a channel, but it's in these super expensive packages. And for someone like me that literally doesn't care about any of the other channels in the super expensive package, I'm not paying for the super expensive package. And Netflix used to release Black Lightning weekly, like it does with Flash and Riverdale. But now they have seemingly stopped doing that. And I don't know whether they're waiting to release the entire season after it's done airing on the CW, or whether they're just not going to put it on anymore. I don't know what the story is. Netflix, as far as I know, has not really delved into what's going on with Black Lightning. But if I have to have Black Lightning have an episode in a crossover, I don't want to have to wait till an entire season is done for me to watch the crossover. So I have issues with Black Lightning joining the Arrowverse. I don't mind if Black Lightning shows up in the episodes of like Legends, Batwoman, Flash, Supergirl, all that. I don't mind if he comes to help out in the crossovers. I just don't want a Black Lightning episode as part of a crossover because Netflix is not releasing them weekly anymore. So, yeah, I have some issues with that. Now we're going to move into most shocking twists. There really wasn't a whole lot of shocking twists. I think we kind of figured out everything that was going to happen. But some things to note. Oliver's death in hour 1. When they essentially killed Oliver at the end of Supergirl's episode, I think it was. I think Supergirl started the crossover. Anyways, hour 1. I was really shocked. I was like, so this is it. This is how Oliver's going out, and he's not going to play a part in the rest of the crossover? Like, it seemed weird. And obviously, you know, we fixed all of that by having him become the Spectre and all that. But I was, like, very confused. I was like, that's it? So, yeah, Oliver's death in hour 1. The fact that Lex Luthor doesn't know that Earth 38's Clark Kent, it's not really Earth 38 anymore, but Supergirl's Clark Kent, it's Superman. He figured out pretty easily, somehow, that Kara is Supergirl. And I've always said that if you figure out one, you can figure out the other. Because Kara and Clark are cousins. Superman and Supergirl are cousins. So it's really not a stretch if you can figure out one to assume that the other is the other version. So I'm really surprised that he went to Tom Welling's Superman and he's like, yeah, Superman is Clark Kent in your world. I don't know how it's possible in mine. And I'm like, how do you not know? So I was like very like confused. I was shocked because I was just kind of assumed that he knew. So the fact that he didn't is really weird. That Tom Welling's Clark Kent gave up his powers. I don't necessarily, like, I don't read the comics, and maybe it's been answered, but how exactly does a Kryptonian give up their powers? If anybody knows the answer to that, please let me know in the comments down below, because I'm really curious how a Kryptonian who essentially is powered by the sun essentially gives up their powers. I really want to know. So if anybody does know, please let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to know. And that Kevin Conroy's Batman murdered Superman. Kevin Conroy is like the famous voice of Batman. Like, basically any animated Batman that we have seen has been Kevin Conroy's voice. And so the fact that he was sort of evil Batman was really kind of weird, and it was a little jarring. So yeah, Kevin Conroy's Batman murdered Superman, and I don't know how I feel about that. Okay, now what I wish was done differently. So the first thing actually has to do with the crossover itself, and that is, I wish that Lex, having taken Clark's place as a Paragon, actually was sort of that secret weapon for the heroes winning. It seemed like it didn't really matter that he switched places with Clark, and I was very confused. I really wanted it to be like, oh, so now they actually have a huge fighting chance because Lex Luthor is sort of that, I don't know what to call it, but that Lex Luthor essentially was the secret weapon that the Paragons needed to win the fight. And it didn't really change anything, I don't think. It really seemed like it would have played out the same way if Brandon Routh's Superman had been the paragon of truth instead of Lex Luthor. So, yeah, I really wish we had, had that happen. But now what I wish had been done differently pre-Crisis. The post-credit scene for Elseworlds was Earth 90 with John Wesley Shipp's Earth 90's Flash essentially standing there amongst a destroyed Earth with dead heroes on the ground, and that kind of worked with Elseworlds. But I think Crisis on Infinite Earths could have played with the post-credits scene being something entirely different for each show, instead of it being Nash releasing the Anti-Monitor. Especially because we saw that scene when Vibe, vibed Pariah to see that Nash had released the Anti-Monitor. We saw that scene. So, I think what could have happened was Arrow could have been the final scene in the pre-Crisis episode where Lila essentially says, "Crisis is here." I think that could have been Arrow's post-credit type scene. Flash literally could have been Nash releasing the Anti-Monitor. Supergirl. I really wish Supergirl had it that Nia was dreaming the Crisis. I feel like they kind of glossed over that power. It's like, oh yeah, Nia can dream the future, and she can dream about the future, and she can know what's going to happen. And I feel like that would have been useful information for Supergirl and her entire Earth to have, knowing that, hey, a crisis is coming, and we're all probably going to die. So I really feel like we could have ended with Nia dreaming that the crisis is coming, and maybe her waking up and kind of freaking out. And then Batwoman is the tricky one, because Batwoman was trying to play catch-up to Elseworlds for the first chunk of their first half of the season, and then it kind of went and eventually caught up to everybody else's point in the story, which was leading into Crisis. I don't know. I think I would have settled with Batwoman having the Red Skies, because we know that the Red Skies did appear on Earth 1 because Oliver, in Purgatory, granted, and Team Flash all saw the Red Skies come at the end of their pre-Crisis episode. So I would have settled for Red Skies and Batwoman being like, what is happening? But I don't know. It's a minor thing, but I really wish that we had gotten that. Now, how does Crisis on Infinite Earths ultimately hold up in relation to the other crossovers? Now, I'm going to stipulate with this one by saying that I am looking at Invasion, Crisis on Earth X, Elseworlds, and Crisis on Infinite Earths. I know that there were many other crossovers, some small, some big, all that, but I did not see those. So I don't feel confident putting them in a ranking. I know enough about them, and I have seen some of them, like Duet and World's Finest and all that, but I don't feel confident putting them in a ranking. So I'm going with the big ones that I have seen, and that is the 4 big crossovers. And I kind of was all over the place with Crisis on Infinite Earths. Going in, I was like, it's going to top them all. It has to. And it wasn't looking like it was going to. So I have my ranking, my definitive ranking that I feel very confident with, being Crisis on Infinite Earths at number 1. At number 2, Crisis on Earth X. That was another one that felt very much like one solid story. Then I have Invasion. I know it's probably an unpopular opinion, but I'm putting Invasion above Elseworlds, which comes in last. The reason for all of that, Crisis on Infinite Earths being at number one, I mean, they pulled it off, for starters. And I'm very happy with how it turned out overall, even though some of the episodes were a little sluggish, and I was sitting there and I was putting it under Crisis on Earth X for a while there because I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But ultimately, it won out. Crisis on Earth X is in number 2 because, much like Crisis on Infinite Earths, it felt very much like a movie, essentially. It flowed very nicely from episode to episode. Invasion and Elseworlds. I put Invasion above Elseworlds because, I mean, really, it's just kind of my preference, I guess. Invasion was not one of my favorites, honestly. It had some issues with it, but overall, it was fun. It was the first big crossover. It was my first crossover because I came into this whole universe through Supergirl. So it was my first crossover. It was Supergirl's first crossover. It was the first big crossover. So I have sort of this soft spot for Invasion. And Elseworlds I put in last, which is probably an unpopular opinion, but I feel like Elseworlds, especially with Crisis on Infinite Earths not really pulling from that, really felt pointless. Watching Elseworlds, it was all over the place. It was crazy. I was like, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm rolling with it because it's fun. But overall, after watching it, I'm like, I don't know. It was random, and then I was like, maybe Crisis on Infinite Earths will make it better. It didn't. It didn't pull from it at all. Psycho Pirate did not show up, and that was sort of the lead into Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he didn't show up, and I was like, okay, I don't know what the purpose of Elseworlds was, other than introducing the Monitor and having Oliver make that deal with him. I don't know, but let me know, what did you guys think of Crisis on Infinite Earths? What is your ranking? You can stick with the 4 that I did, or you can throw in all the other crossovers, big and small. Either way, let me know all of that in the comments down below. Like I said before, if anybody knows how a Kryptonian gives up their powers, let me know all that too. Really curious about all of that. So leave all your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload my latest videos. Follow me on Instagram. Follow the fanfiction page. Follow the Facebook page. Follow the archive of our own page. All of the links to those are in the description down below. And I will see you all in another video. Bye, guys.